thing up here a moment.
Hello, this is Greg Allison, Green Greg's, coming to you live on 12 April 22. Time on deck is 1400 hours Central Daylight Time. And I got special guest tonight, Jason Avers. And we're going to be talking about quite a few things. Tonight, we're going to talk about solutions to the problems of shortages of fertilizers and fuels. And also, when we talk about growing in our yards or lawns, which can feed more than people than we have in North America if we do it properly, gardening on septic lines, just in case you have to do it, how to do that. So we got a few topics we're going to cover. I hope we're not too late tonight because I may have an appointment with the upstairs. I'm getting ready for a procedure tomorrow. So I don't want to drag this out too much tonight. That's probably TMI. Sorry about that, guys. But by the way, talking about fertilizers and gardening, right now is a good time to get your seeds still. If you haven't got them already, you should have, because it's planting time already. Check my link to True Leaf Market, which I put on most of my videos that aren't live, and sometimes on live videos. I'll try to include it on this video tonight. And we got some folks starting to come in the house now, 22 in the house so far. I expect that number will pop up. Granny Atlanta, Stan Granville, and still Roz, Mason 662. Mary is Tulsa Fox, Titanium Hero, Lynn Wise. How y'all doing? Okay, now. So our special guest tonight is Mr. Jason Avers. You know, he's with Green Agroforestry is his YouTube channel. If you've not seen that, I got to tell you something, guys. Jason Avers is one of the smartest guys out here on YouTube. Now, I'm a rocket scientist. If I'm telling you somebody smart, take it to the bank.
Thank you.
Take it to the bank. So I have a lot of admiration for my fellow wizard and right now mad scientist, Jason Avers. So Jason, you're cooking us some stuff there. What do you got?
All right. Yeah, I've got all kinds of stuff for you tonight. Start off with the problem with fertilizer coming up that we've been seeing, well, for some time now. We've known about peak phosphorus for a while. This is an event that should hit us somewhere around 2033, 2034. So about 12 years from now, we'll reach that point where the mining of phosphate rock has hit its limit. We won't have more input of phosphate coming into the system. From this point on, it'll become more expensive and there'll be less and less of it. 30 to 50 years from now, almost none of it, which means we have to make some major changes in the way we do agriculture, or we're going to be up the creek without a paddle, so to speak. We have solutions for that. Obviously, right now we have a problem with urea fertilizers and nitrate fertilizers because a lot of the major producers for those aren't shipping them to us right now. And they weren't going to ship them anyway. We already knew this ahead of time because they had said, we're going to keep these for ourselves. We don't have enough. Even before the trouble with Ukraine started up, we already knew that this was going to be an issue. We have solutions for that as well.
Absolutely. So appreciate that. Oh, by the way, once again, our special guest tonight is Jason Avers. He has his own YouTube channel. His YouTube channel is Green Forestry. Help me out here.
Green Country Agroforestry.
I was getting the country. I knew I was missing something. Green Country
Agroforestry. There you go.
Green Country Agroforestry.
On the shirt. Right there. There it is. On the shirt.
There it is. So appreciate it.
Oh my goodness. I don't know if you can read it. It's this has been through the wash a few times. I need to get another one.
So make sure you subscribe to his channel. Bang the update notification bell and click all when you subscribe to this channel. And if you're not subscribed to my channel, do the same thing here. So Jason, I just did a video and you came in the live chat, a live session a few nights ago on this topic of our shortages in fertilizer and how some of it, like the phosphorus, is time limited, how we're going to have problems down the road, how our current methodologies are not sustainable. Big agriculture as we know it is not sustainable. We've got to start shifting gears, and the sooner we shift gears, the better. The good news for everyone is some of us are already working on this, and Jason is a prime example. So Jason, talk to us.
All right. So the last time we had a Zoom meeting, Mary decided to throw me a curveball, and she was asking about how you could tell what your parent rock or substrate material was if it has sufficient phosphorus. And I didn't know how to answer the question at the time. I was like, that's a good question. I'll get back with you on that. Incidentally, limestone is your best parent rock for getting phosphorus out. Unfortunately, most of the continental United States has a lot of limestone underneath it, or it's readily accessible.
Amen. There's a lot of it around here.
So trapped in that carbonate rock, we have a sufficient amount of phosphorus to keep us going for quite a while. And the kind of things that you would do to get it out on a localized level without having to, say, go out to the ocean and import it. We can also get phosphorus from kelp, from seaweed. That might be a large scale agriculture solution for the future. But for the home gardener, for the backyard gardener, or the small homestead owner, growing trees, mining your phosphate from the subsoil with your trees is a good way to go. There are certain species of plants, for example, most of your chenopodiums do a good job of mining phosphorus as well. Chenopodiums, of course, is lamb's quarter, and its relatives, quinoa and amaranth. And I think I showed some of those amaranth seeds the last time we were on.
Let me speak to that a minute. So something I've told people in my worm bedding videos is the best bedding for a worm bed, it really is tree chips, wood chips. And the reason for wood chips is that they are pulling those minerals from deep in the ground. The problem is modern agriculture depletes the topsoil, and we're not replenishing everything. And but some things that we are replenishing, like the phosphorus, is limited supply. But that's a macro NPK or macronutrients. There's a lot of macronutrients that you're not getting at all in their diet. And one of them is magnesium. And for me, that had the side effect that my heart rate started going up and getting seemingly uncontrollable. I found eating tree nuts helped me a lot. Well, putting things in your garden that come from the subsoil. I mean, a lot of gardeners, also organic gardeners, like to use rock dust anyway.
Right.
So it's a very important thing to do. But if you can make your compost from wood chips, it takes a while for it to break down, especially in the West when the moisture is low. But worms accelerate the breakdown of wood chips quite a bit. So that's a good reason to have worms. Worms break down a lot of these, accelerate a lot of decomposition processes. So worms are very valuable for that. Not to mention they and if you got to use animal manures, it's known that no known human pathogen can survive inside the gut of a worm. And you give the worms a couple of months, and they'll turn over a worm bed completely. You know, they'll go through all of it, make it all castings, which won't burn your plants up when you use them for fertilizing. You just put that stuff out there, and it's like nature's time release. Like Miracle-Gro acts like they invented time release, but Mother Nature had them beat from the get-go with worm castings. So that stuff dissolves. Yeah. It's a perfect rate to rate your plant.
After the material passes through the gut of the worm, it comes out in a perfect little capsule with a little slime coat around it that holds it in place. It's a little tiny bead, and this holds your moisture. It holds your nutrients together until it's dissolved and broken apart by a plant root wanting to get in there and pull that out, or by the bacteria breaking it up and distribute it to the plant roots. It's a perfect little time release capsule.
It's perfect. Beautiful stuff. Mother Nature had all the chemical companies beat by a long shot from the get-go.
Yep.
You know, I like to tell people, Jason, that you don't have some giant big bird flying over a forest spraying everything to make it grow. It's all in the soil. Living soil is good soil. Any book on organic gardening should start with that. So, but this whole idea that Jason's got some potential solutions here. And I'm glad you looked up the mineral, the rock, because limestone is very plentiful. And I put lime in my worm beds just to keep the insect populations down. So that means my worm castings are already, you know, pretty rich in everything I need. I even add molasses to worm tea real heavily, so it has, you know, got iron, a lot of minerals in it from the molasses, in addition to the leachate that it gets out of the worm castings themselves.
The sugars don't hurt either.
Oh no, the plant,
all your bacterial life requires that sugar to
that's
multiply.
what the bacteria in the ground are looking for. So what happens, a lot of people don't realize this, is plants actually put sugars out from the roots into the soil to feed the bacteria in the soil and the mycelium networks in the soil, the dendritic networks of mycelium. If your soil is healthy, then you'll have these shooting off through the soil. That is good. If you got that, that's a good thing. If you don't, you're missing something, because the bacteria will break down nutrients that's already in the soil to make them more readily available to the plant roots. And the mycelium will actually transport it. They will transport nutrients to the plant. Why? Because the plant is feeding them. But in our modern gardening and modern agriculture, the plants are still putting the sugars in the soil, but they're wasting it because there's nothing there for them to feed. The soil is dead. So, so tell us about some of the stuff you're working on, some of your ideas there, Jason, for
right. So for fertilizer, we've got a couple of different methods that will help out. Of course, obviously, we've mentioned wood chips are a great place to start. Worms are a good place to start. Everybody has a ready supply of urea. This is how do I approach this topic? I've done a video on this before.
Let me help you out. You ever seen John Color, Green Growing? What's he call his channel? John Color, he's a funny guy. He's a short little guy. He's always so enthusiastic. He starts his video out.
He's the guy that juices everything.
Yeah. He'll go for an hour.
His face is always red, and he's super hyper. Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, he is super hyper, but I love him to death. But he did a video or two, a series what he likes, but he discovered he don't want to talk about it much anymore. Ponics is his topic. And quite frankly, it's just a human version of aquaponics.
Oh my.
Same site.
Well, if you don't want to go to that extreme, the thing that I've discovered that works really well is to get a large container that you can put some carbon material in. I used wood chips the last time around, but the first time I tried it, I used straw. You could use your grass clippings. You could use hay. Well, maybe not hay, but because of pesticides, you could use leaves. Any sort of carbon material you can put into that container. And you want to make sure that you can drain the bottom of it so it doesn't stay stagnant. And then every day you take the produce of the bladder and you put it on the top and you soak it in. You do this for 6 months. Now, whenever you're not topping off the barrel or container that you're working with, make sure you keep it covered so the rain doesn't wash everything out. But after 6 months of soaking it with whatever you produce every day, just come back and make sure that it remains moist for the remaining 6 months. So it's a 1 year turnaround. After 1 year, you're going to be left with some incredibly black dirt, which is about 10-20-10 for fertilizer purposes. If you use something like leaves or wood chips, if you use straw, it's going to be a little bit more on the nitrogen and less on everything else.
Yeah,
that's one method. One method. Another method, of course, is to take your wood chips, leaves, or whatever carbon material you've got available, put it into a bin, and inoculate it with mushroom spawn. If you're using something like straw, you'd want to use things like oyster mushroom spawn, or king oyster. If you've got wood chips to work with, go ahead and use king stropharia. The thing that I've experimented with over the past couple of years is don't combine two different strains of fungi together in the same bed. They'll compete with each other, and one of them might flush and the other one won't, but you won't get quite the amount of return in edible fungi, if you're looking for edible fungi, that you would. They'll do a really good job of decomposing the material, but you won't get as much food out of it. Once again, in about a year's amount of time, if you have a heavy inoculation of fungus in that substrate material, you're going to have good, rich compost out of it. And this is also high in nitrogen. And in the case of leaves and wood chips being used for your substrate material, you'll have a lot of your phosphorus and potassium in there too, and micronutrients, for example.
Well, there's an advantage actually to growing mushrooms that a lot of your crops don't have. You don't require as much light when they first start fruiting. You want to keep them in the dark. You might, as they start to fruit, give them some light, on the cycle, but they don't require light the way other stuff does. So you can grow them indoors easy. In fact, I'm building a building under a shade tree to grow mushrooms right now. I'm almost got it complete. And
nice.
For me,
you're going to be able to control your humidity and your amount of light that they're getting. And I don't know, do you have any plans for setting up to control the CO2 and oxygen levels, or are you just going to go with what you've got naturally?
I'm going to go with humidity and temperature for my initial controls. I'll put in a humidifier. My microgreens have to have a dehumidifier because I'm trying to keep the fungus down. But in this case, I'll add a humidifier. Right. And so my mushroom house is going to have 3 rooms. It's got 3 rooms actually already. It's got a room that's going to be my clean room. I'll put the hood in where I can actually work with spawn themselves down the road. I've got a room that I'll start the growth in. I'll keep dark all the time, and then I'll have a fruiting room.
The fruiting room.
Yeah, I'll have lights on from time to time. I've almost got this project done, and I had 65.
You'll have a really good lab then.
Yeah, well, I really hoped I had it done months ago. I had 65 bags of mushrooms growing on a rice substrate, but that's the way I got them. But I hope I can salvage something from those bags. But they've been sitting for a really long time, so that's going to be interesting to see what I can get out of that. But that's one way to grow. But you can also grow like oysters in buckets, and you can change substrates. But the wood substrate has a big advantage. Now you want to put it in an autoclave. You want to sterilize it before you use it, just like Jason says. You don't want anything else competing in there. But when you get done, you've got excellent stuff to put in your garden or in a worm bed and let the worms work it further. So, either way.
About the only mushroom that you can grow without taking a whole lot of effort to sterilize everything is the King Stropharia. It's very forgiving of having other things competing in the area. But if you were able to sterilize before you inoculated, you would get much bigger flushes and a lot more out of it.
Say that name again so everybody gets it.
It's King Stropharia or Stropharia rugosa annulata.
All right.
Otherwise known as wine cap mushrooms. They're another name for them, common name for is garden giant. They come up with a really, whenever they get really big, they have just a massive dinner plate size cap on them.
Oh,
but they're probably tastiest whenever they're just button size.
Oh yeah. So this is a good way to create some stuff. Now your first method sounds like the beginning methods for making black powder.
Well, that was one of the methods that was used throughout the years by the various nations of the world back in the day, whenever they were still waging war with black powder and cannons and things of that nature. Of course, they don't do that anymore, but that method still works if you're looking for a way to get nitrogen-rich earth to add to your garden. This isn't, of course, the only way you can get fertility for your garden. You can also grow it. For example, let me see here. I've got a bag of seeds here. And these ones, I haven't even opened these up yet. This one is I've got a leguminous plant here, which comes in. This was from Outside Pride, just ordered up off of Amazon. But I don't know if I can get the camera on this or not to the point where you can see it. So put that down there. Got a handful of these little seeds here. And these have been encapsulated in clay and inoculated with the necessary bacteria, rhizobium bacteria, so that whenever these plants grow, those bacteria will spread in the soil, pull nitrogen out of the air, turn it into nitrate that the plant can use. This particular plant is called alfalfa.
Yeah.
And
alfalfa, beans, peas, vetch is a vine.
Vetch also, yeah. And vetch grows wild in a lot of places.
Yeah. Vetch I can harvest vetch just as a weed and get the seeds and use them. Clover,
large amounts of it.
But if you let the plants fruit extensively, they may start drawing some of that nitrogen back out of the soil. So sometimes it's best to whack them off when they're premature. That's my understanding.
If you're growing things like alfalfa and clover, whenever you go by and you cut them back on a regular basis, you're going to go ahead and harvest the tops.
Right.
Take that harvested material and put it into a bucket or a barrel. And I'll tell you what to do that in a minute. After you've done that, whenever you shock the tops and you cut back the foliage, you will have a root die off at the same time. The amount of roots that can be supported is equivalent to the amount of tops that they have. So whenever you damage the tops, the roots die off. And what's attached to the roots are those nitrogen nodules. So you just dropped nitrogen in the area around it. So you've got these planted around your trees, you got them planted around your garden, various places. Say you're going to go plant some squash, or you're going to plant some tomatoes, or whatever else, corn, whatever else is you're going to plant. If you've got your clover or your other nitrogen fixing plant in there to begin with, and just before you go to plant your food crop, you come back and you top kill it, you cut it off, or occulted, which is where you just lay out a strip of plastic over the top of it to deprive it of light, so it'll kill the plant on the surface.
Right.
Just release a bunch of nitrogen into the soil, and then you come back and plant where you just killed off that cover crop. If you don't kill off all that cover crop and you're using perennial clover, whenever you're done, it just grows right back in and protects the soil from erosion and keeps on growing. Now, that part that you took off, you're going to want to combine with some other things that you could grow. For example, these guys, this is it looks like mouse droppings, but these are borage seeds I've got here. Borage. If I can
Oh,
get
you had
that
a
in.
little higher. There you go.
There we go. There it is. So they kind of look like, almost look like little mouse droppings. But this is borage, and borage is a good accumulator of potassium. So we're talking about borage.
Makes a nice microgreen. They
taste like
tastes like
yeah, it tastes like cucumbers. They're delicious when they're baby, when they're little baby greens before they get mature. They're absolutely delicious, like cucumbers. You throw those into your salad, and you would swear you had cucumbers in your salad, but it's just borage. But it sends its roots down and mines the substrate, mines the subsoil for potassium. So your amaranths, your chenopodium, the lamb's quarter, pigweed, stuff like that, they spray for pigweed in cattle fields. The pigweed's there because there's an absence of phosphorus in the topsoil. There's not enough phosphorus. So the pigweed grows trying to get the phosphorus up. And then people come along and spray it and kill it off. Now they have to add other amendments to the soil to get the grass to grow properly. Anyway, it's crazy what people do here.
Hey, that's not a good agroforestry practice, is it there, Jason?
Absolutely not. I mean, but a lot of people who are raising livestock are raising too many livestock for the amount of land that they're raising them on. And that's why they have to keep on adding all these extra inputs, because they've got an imbalanced ecosystem. Whenever you have an imbalanced ecosystem, Mother Nature wants to try to correct it. And those things that Mother Nature does trying to correct it are the things that people see as problems or weeds in the system. In any case, we've got our borage, we've got maybe some amaranth or pigweed, whatever you've got, plus your alfalfa or clover. Those three plants together provide you with nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. Put all of them together into a bin, barrel, bucket, what have you. Fill it all the way to the top, add a little bit of sugar, add enough water so you can immerse those weeds. And if you have weeds growing in the same place, go ahead and take your scythe or your hand sickle, like one of these, and just cut those, throw them in there as well. They've done their job. They've managed to pull the nutrients up out of the soil. They're in the plant now.
Yeah, and dandelions are good for this too, by the way. They pull from deep down.
Dandelions have deep tap roots, and they like to pump up calcium. If you got lots of dandelions showing up, you've got one or two or maybe both problems. Soil compaction, that's why you have that deep root trying to take care of that problem, and lack of calcium in your topsoil. So dandelions are trying, once again, to fix the problem in your soil, and people go, oh, it's a weed, kill it. They're trying to fix what's wrong with your soil. Your soil wasn't healthy. That's why you have things like Canadian thistle, pigweed, dandelion.
One of the most edible medicinal things growing in nature. They're one of the most wondrous plants, and every stinking Roundup commercial shows people killing dandelions.
Killing the dandelion.
What heresy?
They also started talking about clover as being a weed after, I think, the 1950s. After they created the first broadleaf herbicides to get rid of problem weeds in the garden, and discovered that it killed off the clover, the seed companies that created the herbicide in the first place as part of their overall products that they offered stopped putting the clover seed into their seed mixes and started calling it a weed. But it was originally there to add fertility. All right, so we've got our various weeds. We've got them in the container. It's full of water. We got a little sugar in there, and you're going to want to put something over the top of it to cover it to keep the mosquitoes from getting in, because you don't want to make a habitat for mosquitoes. You could get mosquito dunks, which are little cakes with Bacillus thuringiensis. You throw in there to kill off the mosquitoes if you wanted to, but just covering it up works just as well, and you don't have to go buy the mosquito dunks. All right, give that 2 or 3 weeks minimum. But the longer you can keep it fermenting, the better it is. The longer it goes, the richer it gets. Now, this stuff is anaerobic to begin with. So where did I put it? Well, I've got it around here somewhere. Oh, there it is. So before you use it as a foliar feed, you might want to get something like this. This is a little 12-volt DC air pump. Get the other end down there into your bucket that you've got that going in, connect it to a power source, and well, that'll aerate your tea there.
Yeah, put a little air stone on it.
Yep.
And
I don't have the air stone for it yet.
Yeah, that's just like making worm tea. I did some videos, a couple of videos on making worm tea. So if you look at my worm tea video and use his formula, it gives you a great NPK solution. Oh yeah, by the way, I get some NPK, enough to grow plants out of my aquaponics systems. I actually use aquaponics water to brew my worm tea. So
I'm just drinking regular tea here, though.
Yeah, that's drinking worm tea.
This is not worm tea. This is just regular tea.
Now I know Jason's got worms.
I've got tons of worms. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I got worms too. I know the guy you got them from. I've heard about him.
You've heard of that Green Greg's fella?
Yeah.
I actually have.
It's got a real fishy logo, by the way.
It's a nice logo.
Yeah, it's a fish made out of worms with a couple of leaves, garden leaves growing.
At the moment, I think I've got more of those red wigglers out there in the garden than night crawlers. Although I still have quite a few night crawlers. They like to come around the spots that I thatch heavily with wood chips, and they'll be working in that. But after it's broken down and turned into humus, that's whenever the regular earthworms take over, and that's where the red wigglers are found most of the time, is in that material. And they get big. They're big and healthy. They're happy there.
Yep.
All right. You can use that fermented plant material after about 3 weeks to a month, but it does get stronger as it goes along. If you don't aerate it, it'll be anaerobic, which means that you don't want to apply it to something that you're getting ready to eat. You could put it down at the root zone of things that are going to be growing for another few months or so before they're finished, and it'll be fine. It's not going to hurt you. By the time you get around to eating it, the sun will have killed off the anaerobic bacteria. The oxygen exposure will have killed off anaerobic bacteria, and you'll be okay. But I wouldn't spray it on something just before eating without running it through with an aerator air stone first.
Well, and that's why you want to aerate worm tea. But I treat everything with vinegar water before I eat it. And I don't spray the worm tea to spray it on fruits either. Some people do put it on lettuce. I wouldn't do that. Anything I was going to harvest in the near term, if after it's been out in the sun and rain for a while, it should be fine.
Usually.
But
yeah, washing your veggies with a little bit of vinegar water or any other sort of light acid solution, organic acid solution, not sulfuric acid or anything like that. But acetic acid or citric acid, either one. Even ascorbic acid, if you have a good source of that, although I'd rather save that for treating scurvy.
There you go. Yeah, it's important for that. So, what we've discussed here so far is ways to get minerals that are in shortage for our gardens, and we've talked about how to go to the sources that pull deep from the ground, trees, because they're pulling the minerals from deep. You can use rock dust. We talked about rock dust. Limestone for the phosphate shortages, and we've talked about how to use borage and go through it again. Tell everybody what 3 plants to use.
All right. Okay. Well, alfalfa, clover, or any other really good leguminous plant to pull in the nitrogen. So you have a nitrogen fixing plant. Follow that up with something like borage, which is going to get you lots of potassium, and something like amaranth, lamb's quarter, quinoa, all of those really good at pulling up phosphorus. So those 3 plants, and some of these are also edible too. For example, I wouldn't eat these particular alfalfa seeds as sprouts because they've been treated already and inoculated with the bacteria to be grown as a crop in the soil. But the seeds that they produce, absolutely, you could use these as a microgreen, and they'd be a good nutritious source of fodder for you or animals if you're feeding animals. But those 3, anything that's going to get you lots of nitrogen, anything that's going to get you lots of phosphorus, anything that's going to get you lots of potassium, those are good. You could also see, I haven't planted these yet. I had to go find someplace where I could buy them because I don't have any growing wild nearby me, but I got these. Hey, everything gets reversed on here. I got these. These are stinging nettle. This is stinging nettle. Nettles are really great at pulling up, and absorbing those nutrients. It's not that they produce them themselves, but they accumulate them.
Right.
So things like nettles you can get and plant in the area, and that will also accumulate nutrients for you.
And nettles are very nutritious. And by the way, it's not reversed in the video, by the way. It looks right in the video.
Oh, okay.
So don't worry.
When I was looking at it, it looked like it was backwards. And oh, it's like that. Like using
It's coming out just right in the video.
Okay, good.
So yeah, another thing just to bear in mind is that clover is also edible. Most clovers are edible.
Yeah. You can it doesn't taste great. It has a very green taste to it, but yeah, they're rich in nutrients. You can eat them. You can eat the flowers. You can even pick the flowers off and dry them and crumble them up and use them to extend your flower supply. If you're aware of certain events taking place, the amount of wheat and therefore flour that we'll have to make bread is going to be somewhat limited for a while. So doing something to extend your flower supply might be good. And so keep in mind, you can always extend your flower with clover leaves. Just let the bees have first crack at them.
Yeah, we need the honey. Something else that the ancients used. Of course, you can use seeds like amaranth, quinoa especially, but also I haven't tried it myself. Now I have actually ate cambium, the inner bark from pine, and it's okay. It's okay to eat. When it's live and pliable, that's the part you can eat. But you can dry that, grind it up, and make a flour from that too. I haven't done that personally, but I've heard of people that have done that. So that's another thing you might use to. I don't know if I want to make flour entirely out of that, but it might be a good way to extend it.
Now, since we're talking about things that you might find growing in your yard, I brought a few things with me from outside. Not all of these are in the best of shape. I just uprooted them this morning and stuck them in pots. But you'll see a lot of these plants growing in your yard other than grass, and you might think that they're weeds, and I guess they are, but they're not necessarily bad. This first one here is called shepherd's purse, and it produces these little heart-shaped seeds up here, which have it's kind of a peppery taste to them. It's a member of the brassica family. You can tell by looking at the flowers. It's got little 4 flowers. It's a cruciferous vegetable and high in protein, and not bad overall. It has a little bit of a sedative effect, so don't eat too much of this. But you can add this as a pot herb, or even use it green in your salad. If you've ever eaten nasturtium leaves, the taste of these seed pods is very much like a nasturtium.
Nice.
All right. Of course, I know you've pointed this one out to viewers before, but this one here, although he's a little bit sad because he just got uprooted and he needs a night to think about it.
Show the flowers. Any flowers on it?
Let me see. They haven't quite opened up yet, most of these.
The flowers are very distinctive. You can see them.
So whenever these open up, they'll be little tiny, delicate blue or white flowers. They come in both varieties, sometimes slightly violet, but it's usually blue or white.
Yeah.
But this particular plant is Stellara media or chickweed, and it grows, well, everywhere.
It's high in oxalic acid, though, so you don't want to eat a whole lot of it. But it grows in great abundance in garden soils and other places like that, soils that have been disturbed here and throughout the South, and out I can see now out to Oklahoma too. I have a lot of it growing in the wintertime. You can eat in the wintertime.
Yeah, it grows in the wintertime. Purple dead nettle grows here in the wintertime as well.
Same here.
And also highly edible. Incidentally, purple dead nettle, when I didn't pick up any up, but I know we've shown it before. It's one of those indicator species. If you see it growing in your yard, it says, hi, there's plenty of nitrogen in this yard, and there's plenty of phosphorus too. They like both. And so if you have it growing, that means your soil is healthy and you can eat it. It's good for you.
Now, to eat it, bear in mind for purple dead nettle, it's a little bit furry, so I would probably want to grind it up a little bit or chew it up really good and have something to wash it down with, or it'll stick in your throat because it's a little bit furry. but it isn't a mint family. And how you can tell
Yeah.
mint is all mints are edible. Now, all mints also have a square stem, and the leaves come out in a cross pattern. You get two leaves coming out this way, and then two this way, two this way, and two this way. So they crisscross, just like that. And they come off from those square stems. It'll be like one level they'll branch one way, the next level they branch another way. That's how you can distinguish a mint, by the square stem and the leaf pattern. And all mints are edible, and as far as I know, only mints do that. So tricky to stop them. Purslane. Purslane is a very nice edible plant. I haven't seen it growing wild in my neighborhood here, but I bought a big pot of a domestic variety. Then it died on me over winter, though.
About the only place we see it growing here is right at the border where the road meets the yard. And yeah. I don't think I want to harvest and eat that because it's had exhaust blowing on it and everything else.
Yeah.
But
sidewalks.
Personally, if you've got it growing someplace where you don't mind getting it is not bad. I got a couple more here. And these are all things that you would find commonly growing in a yard, especially if you've had a garden where the soil has been disturbed.
Okay, we got a good question here. Dr. Geeman's place says, Greg and Greg's, can it be confused with hemlock? No, not purslane. What you can confuse with hemlock is Queen Anne's lace.
Yeah.
Queen Anne's lace or wild carrots. Looks a lot like, and they're in the same family as hemlock. So one's edible and the other's very toxic.
Very poisonous.
Yes, yeah. I believe about the most toxic plant going in North America. Wild carrots should have a little purple flower right in the middle of the flower bunch. The flowers are flat, whereas hemlock usually have smaller flowerets and range, and they got kind of a domish shape to them. There's a lot of ways to tell them apart. I've covered this in videos on a couple of different occasions. So go back and check my wild carrot hemlock video. I did one last summer, I believe. Check that out. That's something you really, really need to watch. And one good way to catch most of my wild edible videos, they're not all there yet, but it'd be easier to find them if you go to greengregs.com than it will be looking through my YouTube channel, quite frankly.
Let's see. I had a couple more to show you. Let's see here. This one you might not realize was edible, but you'll find these growing also just about everywhere. Have a look at this flower here, or not flower, but the leaf. Do you recognize what that one is, Greg?
Now, what is that?
This one is called a geranium, a wild geranium.
Geranium, okay.
Wild geraniums, and once again, grows everywhere. Grows like a weed. Not incredibly palatable, fresh, but as something that you would chop up and throw in your pot and cook for a pot herb. Also very edible. And take a look at I'm just going to go ahead and uproot it real quick here. But have a look at the root structure on this thing.
Wow.
Look at that. So that tells you this is a plant that likes to go down there and grab minerals and bring them up. So if you're looking for a good mineral
collector,
mineral collector, something to add minerals to your diet, geraniums will do that for you. And it's once again one of those wild things that you can grow and you can eat.
Well,
and nature just provides it for you.
Yeah, curly dock and a lot of your wild docks do that too. They have a very long, big taproot, but they're very bitter. They turn bitter fast. You have to really
you have to cook them.
Yeah,
you have to cook them with something for seasoning. Throw a little bacon or what have you in there. Season them up, and they won't be bad. But I've got a lot of dock growing just outside the door here. Let's see. This last one is not the best time of year, and I don't know if we can get a good picture of it or not. But I'm just going to go ahead and pull it out of the pot. Probably in a couple of weeks, this plant will take off, and you'll be able to see these little side leaves better. But this one, you can identify it from these seed pods that rise up like this, and of course this profusion of tiny little leaves that are multi-lobed down here that spread out all the way around the base of it. Another brassica. This one's called hairy bittercress, and it's one of those disturbed soil lawn type weeds that is also very edible and actually kind of tasty. It tastes a little bit like a mustard. or arugula, if you like. If you're eating the leaves. So these are all things that are already growing in the ground. You're going to find them all over in nature. There's no reason for anybody to starve. These may not be the most tasty or palatable of vegetables that they are, but they are growing wild and they're accessible. So there's no need for anybody to starve, unless, of course, you just didn't know that you were looking at food.
I did one of my videos where I was standing outside of a Waffle House in Atlanta, in one of the suburbs of Atlanta. And there's all kind of wild edibles out in the lawn there. And I was just showing everybody what I was out in the lawn. I said, hey, food out here is better for you than the food inside.
Yeah, in most cases, yeah. You get lots of vitamins and minerals out of these. You're not going to get a lot of calories out of these. So for calories, you need to be growing things for calories. We talked about the last time growing calories. I've got a couple other calorie crops here to show you.
It's hard to find calorie content in wild edibles. The root of cactus is an exception, but it's very hard to find stuff like that.
All right. So in this particular tray, now usually people don't start these in plug trays like this, but I did because we've got a family of squirrels that's taken up residence next door, and I've seen 4 or 5 of them, and I know that they will run right out and snatch these out of the ground before they can germinate if they see me planting them. These guys are peanuts. So I've got these, and there's 3 or 4 trays of these that I've gotten started, and they're about the point now where I can go ahead and take them outside and get them going. But I grew these out of birdseed. Wow. Peanuts for birdseed. So no other place where you can get seed. Go in, have a look at the hardware store. If they've got whole peanuts in there, even if they've been removed from the shell, but the peanut itself is still intact, you can plant that. You can grow it. It's going to produce peanuts for you, and they produce really well. Let's see, another thing that we've been growing, and you may see these. I'm pretty sure you've seen them down there in Alabama, but they grow out here too. This is a canna lily, and this is one that I kept stored in peat moss, moistened peat moss over the winter. Slightly purplish color on the root indicates this is a canna indica, as opposed to one of the other varieties. Now, all the cannas are edible. I've noticed that the indica produces much larger roots than the rest of them. This is just a chunk. One plant after a season of growth here in Oklahoma is, after being just a tiny little piece of root about this size, produces about 20 pounds of food, equivalent to potatoes. You just take that root, knock the dust off, knock the dirt off of it, put it into a pot full of water, boil it for about half an hour to help loosen up the skin, and then you peel the skin off. What's inside of it is a starchy potato-like substance that has just a little bit of dietary fiber in it, not stringy like celery, but it has more substance to it than a regular potato. In other words, it'll sit on your gut better, and these will fill you up really well. 20 pounds of this is about enough food to feed 2 or 3 people for a day as far as calories go, and that's in a 2 square foot area. They grow like weeds, and you don't have to tend them very much. They also produce nice flowers at the top. Butterflies like them, the hummingbirds like them. The flowers are also edible.
That's a lot of advantages. Hey, by the way, I've planted some sunchokes, so they have nice roots too that you can eat. So, and they make the sunflower, what they make. This shoot here, the early shoot as it's coming up, high in protein. Chop that up, stir fry it. So a good multi-use vegetable that if you have this planted in your landscape, people are just going to say, wow, what pretty flowers you have. But this is a vegetable. It's a very good thing for a prepper, but have food that's camouflage food.
Camouflage food. Yeah, daylilies are edible, canna lilies are edible, and people who look at them go, wow, flowers, that's nice. But they're good for your pollinators as well. So you have food for you, and you have food for the pollinators, which is good and beneficial all the way around.
So Crunchy Biscuit asked, how do you distinguish wild geranium from Carolina geranium?
Carolina geranium has really deep crenellations in the leaves, but Carolina geranium is a wild geranium. It's just the variety that's more common to that portion of the country. There's the Carolina, there's crowsfoot, there's various types of the wild geranium, and they all crossbreed with each other. So that particular one that I just showed you, it's probably got some Carolina geranium genetics in it, for all I know. But they're all edible as far as I know. Okay, you've got your peanuts that you've grown and harvested. Well, I've got a little something to show you here. This contraption is called an oil press. It's a manual oil press, kind of like having a manual meat grinder. Well, this is a manual oil press. Let me see if I can get this close to the camera so you can have a good look at it. All right. So it's got an adjustable knob here, which controls how fine or coarse the press cake coming out this end is. Your oil is going to come out of this tiny slit here at the bottom. You see that slit there? Right there. And this spot here is where you put your lamp at, or your candle, if you're going to be supplying a little additional heat during your oil pressing process. Some seed oils you can get away with pressing cold, but most of them you're going to want to add just a little bit of extra heat as you're turning the crank. Of course, this thing's got holes down here at the bottom to mount it onto a desk or a bench, which is something I need to do a little bit later on this year, because I think we're going to actually fire this up and use it for the first time this year. I got this in 2005, a long time ago, whenever I first started getting prepping supplies together for the possibility of an eventual Carrington event type thing, since nobody's really doing anything to harden the power grid. Having my own cooking oil seemed like a good idea to me, since it's kind of hard to come by cooking oil otherwise. But it's made by this company here, Piteba, right there, Piteba. Yep. And these things are only getting more expensive. I think when I picked this up, it was 75, 80 bucks. They're a lot more expensive now. But when I first saw this, there was a lady in I want to say Kenya, living in a mud hut, raising her kids, and earning a living pressing seed oil with one of these. So this is something that you can actually produce a valuable product with as a tool that you can have in case things go horribly wrong out there.
Wow, nice. So yeah. Where do you buy those? Does Piteba have a website you can get them through, or where do you recommend people go look for that?
Piteba should have a website, and you can get it through there, or you'll find sellers on Amazon as well. Nice. People that buy them in bulk and then offer discounts.
What grow zone are you in there, Jason?
We're in 7A.
In 7A.
Oh, Northeast Oklahoma is zone 7A, but we have some peculiarities. We have Arctic cold in the winter, and we have blistering heat in the summer. We're 7A because we have a 200-day long growing season. But the extremes of cold and the extremes of heat make things interesting. There are some things that are rated for zone 7A for hardiness that will die here. But if I can get it to grow here, it'll grow just about anywhere.
Wow. So this where I live is barely 7B, but sometimes it's on the border of being 7A. My property in Arizona is 7A. Well, hey, Robert Steck, thank you very much. We got a super chat from Robert Steck. He says, buy green Greg's worms to make Terra Preta del Indigo.
There you go.
What civilizations were built on in the Amazon basin. Well, I should be selling worms, greengregs.com, hopefully in late June. So hopefully I'll be back in selling worms again then. So thank you there, Robert. Appreciate it. You gave me a super chat and nice. A part two at the same time. That's awesome.
Terra Preta is an interesting substance. They actually mine it out of the Amazon. But thousands of years ago, there were tribes living in that area that were planting deliberate planting food forests. And their civilization, as they went along, they would dig out trenches and fill them up with things like broken pottery, charcoal, whatever scraps that they had to compost in those pits. So they were pit composting, and they were adding other things to it. Something that's kind of interesting about living in a river delta, as you get further down the river, the solids, the heavier solids have settled out, and you have a lot of silt. You don't have a lot of large particles like stones or rocks, things that would give you extra space in your soil. So doing things like making pottery and putting your broken pottery down in the soil gives you some variation in texture, which is good for creating those channels for air and water to flow through. Since they didn't have gravel to work with, they made their own. But charcoal, or not charcoal, but clay is also very porous, and being porous, it can absorb and hold on to water and then release it over time. So adding clay and also charcoal to the soil increase the period of time that the soil could go without receiving water, because it's storing water inside of the porous structure. Also, the porous structure of charcoal is excellent for providing surface area for beneficial microbes to survive on. So in all respects, those particular additives, along with the extra organic matter, is really what made Terra Preta so effective. And it's so effective that the microbes that are in it can reproduce themselves in another soil sample. You take that and you move it over to a new soil sample and put it into that new soil sample. And as long as you've got organic inputs going in there, those microbes are going to explode and expand. So once you've got that good, healthy soil, you can use that to inoculate another batch of soil and keep on going with it.
Beautiful. Hey, by the way, I got another super chat from Brian Perendi. Thank you very much. He's put in $5. He said, swivel dews, plants, and worm teas. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it, bud. He's up in Minnesota. A little bit cooler up there where he is.
Way up there in the plains.
Yeah, he's a little bit cooler up there in this territory. Brian, you got any snow? So
right.
We got a Tricky Vicky who's come from Alabama. She's now up in, where are you at now, Tricky? She was talking about growing near Auburn. All right, we got Vicky Salvage. I know where she's at. She's in Ozarks. So it's probably a very similar grow zone. She's probably in 7A. What's your grow zone there, Vicky? Either Vicky.
Vicky might be a 7B.
You think she might be a 7B?
I think Vicky Savage is a 7B, yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. It's probably a little further north than here, but that could be.
But
I think it is.
It's just a hop, skip, and a jump away from the Missouri border where she's at.
Yeah, okay. So Brian is saying it's melting. The snow's melting. All right, very good. I know he's jumping at the bit to get out and plant. So, and we all right. So we've covered a lot of territory here about what you need for your soil, what you need for fertilizers. Anything else you'd like to touch on in that topic?
All right. I know before we get started, you wanted me to talk a little bit about growing on septic tank drain fields, because I did a live stream about this recently.
Yeah, that really excited me.
It was a little over an hour live stream, and most of it was me just talking to the viewers and discussing things. But the actual information is very brief and easy, and I can pass it on right now. The thing about growing on drain fields, you can do it. You don't want to grow root vegetables on your drain field.
Well, before we go into this, we might want to emphasize why it's so important. Because from our lawns in North America, you could feed about 1.8 billion people if you follow the directions that Jason and I was given a few months ago when we're talking about how you could grow your essential foods on 1/10 of an acre to feed 4 people.
I think the calculation was 1,017 square feet per person of growing space.
Yeah. So when you look at that, you can really take care of a lot of people. But so we should just turn our lawns into gardens. But some of the lawn is septic fields. So you need to,
depending on where you're at,
you need to manage that portion of your lawn if you live out in the rural areas where you have septic tanks. So now that we made that introduction, go ahead there, Jason.
All right. So in our last meeting, we talked about growing sweet potatoes as a ground cover as part of that 1,017 square foot growing space per person. But you don't want to grow sweet potatoes on your drain field. So don't put any root crops at all on your septic tank drain field. And also avoid things that have deep root systems. I like to plant trees and shrubs and perennials. Some of these do have extensive root systems because they're, once again, going down, mining the subsoil, trying to get those nutrients up for me. And that, of course, in the form of their leaves, helps me enrich the soil for everything else. About 20 feet away from your drain field is about as close as you want to put any fairly large tree. I have plums, jujubes, things like that are about 20 feet away from that drain field. And I can't really get them any closer. So I've got this spot where my drain field is, where I have to be selective about what I plant there. Shallow root system things like blueberries, you can plant over a drain field. Annuals like corn, which are heavy feeders, well suited to planting on a grain field. And since they grow and they produce the edible portion up here, well away from anything that might splash up on it, you don't have to worry that you might accidentally get some of those bacteria that are essential for breaking down the waste material onto your food. You don't want to get any of those coliform bacteria onto what you're getting ready to eat. Obviously, you wouldn't want to grow your salad greens on the septic drain field. They grow really well, but you wouldn't want to eat them. Now, the plant is going to carry out a filtration process as it's growing. In other words, the water that enters in through the roots is going to be filtered by the plant itself. Plants, the xylem of plants is an extra filtration system. So what's inside the fruit that grows is not going to have that bacteria in it, but it may have that bacteria on it. And if you're buying produce, incidentally, in North America, sometime during the winter months, there's a good chance that the produce that you're buying came from a portion of the world where they go ahead and irrigate with effluent. In other words, human sewage. It's a fertilizer. It irrigates as well, and it's free. It's a waste byproduct, and they grow it, they ship it to us, and we eat it. So there's a good chance you're already eating stuff that was fertilized with human waste. You just didn't know it yet. Well, now you know it. So it's okay.
Golf courses use a lot of that too, by the way. It's fertilizer for golf courses.
Oh yeah. And so it's okay to eat. Just make sure you don't grow your root vegetables in it. Keep heavily rooted plants away from the drain field. The drain field for the average house is usually going to be about 25 feet out from wherever your tank was, the septic tank system, and about 20 feet wide. That's about the average size of them. If you've got a bigger system because you have a much bigger house, then probably you know what the dimensions of your system is. If you don't, then get in touch with your plumber or whoever it is that installed the system to let you know what the dimensions are and where it's at, and you can plan your planning accordingly.
Yeah, if you had your house built and you got to see it, you'll know. But then again, another way to figure out is just how's your grass growing.
Yeah, you can look and see how well everything grows. The places where everything is growing really lush and rich, yeah, you've got a drain field.
Especially if you're in a dry season. That's a good indicator.
Sub-irrigation.
Yep.
Speaking of sub-irrigation, there's a project that we launched on this month, and I just released the video for it on Monday. It was yesterday. We had the premiere for it. We called it Water for Every Garden, and in this video I show you how to go about using some basic hand tools to going through your backyard garden and creating a sub-irrigation system. Got hair in my mouth. A sub-irrigation system, a composting system, and it uses an unutilized space that you have, which is the walkways in your garden. We didn't touch on this last time we talked. It was 1,017 square feet for the food that you're going to be growing per person, but you're going to need some space in there to have access to those plants. So that walkway space would be additional space on top of that growing surface. And this would be wasted space in most circumstances. You have to have a walkway to have access to your plants so you can tend them, so you can weed them, so you can get your harvest, so you can water them if they need to be watered. And in a lot of cases, this would be just wasted space because you're just using this walkway to grow weeds otherwise. So we've come upon a method that enables you to have that walkway. It won't grow weeds, and instead you can use it to help keep your garden watered even whenever there's a drought on, and you'll be producing compost to further enrich the beds in subsequent years. So that's called Water for Every Garden. I recommend checking it out. The quick basic method is figure out where you're going to have your planting areas. Strip the sod out in between them. This is really important if you're someplace that has a lot of running grass, Bermuda and stuff like that. Bermuda is hard to get rid of. I mean, it's a wonderful grass for what it is, but it's hard to get rid of. So you strip your sod out. After you've got your sod stripped out, you take that sod, which has all the fertility that the grass has managed to accumulate. And depending upon how much turf building you've been doing, you're going to have 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches. I had between 2 and 3 inches of turf that I turned over. You put that into your planting areas. That will compost down and provide food for your plants. Now you've got this bare strip of ground in there. Take your shovel and go down. I went down 16 inches and 8 inches wide, so that every linear foot, I had 1 cubic foot of trench. This allows for whenever the rain falls, it'll go down to the low point, which is where your trench is, fall into the trench instead of sheeting off of the property and your water being lost. But instead of having an open trench here that people can fall into, they'll attract bugs, mosquitoes, and that sort of thing. We come back with wood chips. We fill that in, fill the trench in with wood chips. So about 50% of the volume of the trench is now occupied by wood chips. So you have about 3.5 gallons of water per linear foot of water capture once it's filled with wood chips.
Oh, great idea.
1 cubic foot of water is about 7.5 gallons. So whenever you've got that filled in with the wood chips take up about half of the space, half of the volume, but they absorb and hold on to that water. Meanwhile, they're in the process of decomposing. So in the future, you come by and you scoop those out, put them back up on the top of your beds on either side, add more wood chips, and you're ready to go for the next year. So your garden path now is no longer a place where weeds are grown. It's a place where you're banking water every time it rains so that you have water available to your plants growing on either side, and it's creating compost for you.
Yeah,
you can even go
later, and it'll be good mineral-rich compost too.
Yeah, you can even go so far as to go ahead and do your regular composting in those trenches. So your kitchen scraps, whatever you were going to compost, go ahead and bury it in those trenches. So you don't have to have a separate space set aside for a compost bin anymore. You're doing the compost in that walkway. So you're maximizing your use of space, which is, I think, fairly important if you're doing backyard gardening, because we don't have a lot of space in our backyards.
That's true. That's true. So,
okay.
Well, so that's it, guys. We can grow on the septic field. Somebody mentioned here aquaponics. You can do that, or container gardens if you will. I'm comfortable with that. And that's also something you can do in your driveway, on your porch, on top of your house, on top of your sheds. Or you could actually put containers, put racks on your walls of your house, your fence, and grow things on the walls. Or
vertically on the wall.
Yeah, or you can put climbing things. So there's so much ways to make use of space. It's not funny. But so we've added to that here. We just multiplied your ability to grow by saying you can grow on septic fills. And we just talked about how to compost wood chips and salvage water at the same time. So these are great things. Now, personally, I take my garden, my food scraps, unless they're spicy or citrus, and I add them to the worm beds. But there are some things that will not add to the worm beds. This would be perfect for. So there are just so many good ideas out here, guys. That's why I like to have Jason on my channel. He's, like I said, he is brilliant. He's a really smart guy, and he covers a lot of territory in these areas. And it's always refreshing to hear him talk about this stuff. He's got a great channel. If you go to his channel, his videos are extremely informative. So you'll learn a lot there. So I think we probably covered enough today. Anything you think we need to cover?
Well, we could talk about energy if you want to.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Or we can save it for later.
Let's go ahead and do it, because I think that's in the fuel shortage solutions is in our title. So let's go ahead and cover that. I almost forgot.
Okay. So we know that we're having problems with fuel, and there's some reasons for that. Fossil fuels are much maligned, you could say, and there's a good reason for that as well. The chemical reactions that take place is whenever we burn fuel of any sort, takes oxygen out of the atmosphere and combines it with carbon to produce carbon dioxide. It's not we produce carbon dioxide, we're taking oxygen out of the air. This is the essential problem in all actuality, because if we don't photosynthesize that byproduct, then that oxygen is no longer in the air for us to breathe. So we need to come up with ways that we can produce and provide for our energy needs without suffocating ourselves. Of course, growing lots of trees and planting things in stacks to maximize photosynthesis is going to help us get a lot of that CO2 converted back into oxygen for us. But there are other things that we can do to produce energy. One of these is this little device that I have here. This is called a thermoelectric generator. Now, most of the time, whenever we're generating power and using machinery to do work, for those of you who are working or watching on a computer right now, if you can, just take your hand and reach out to the tower of your computer and just put it on the top of the tower. And you can feel that there's quite a bit of heat coming from that machine. It's generating a lot of heat. If you have LED lights in your house, and hopefully you do, these are very, very energy conserving devices. They run on direct current, but since your house is running on alternating current, there has to be a diode inside of the bulb, which converts your alternating current into direct current. This is where you actually lose most of your energy from running an LED bulb. It's not from the bulb using it. It's that diode converting that energy from AC to DC and producing waste heat.
It's called rectification.
Right. Yeah.
If you set them right, you can do full wave rectification. And
but you wind up losing some energy as heat
that's
loss.
Right, because most like a silicon diode, you get a 0.7 volt drop across the junction in the diode. It's called a PN junction. Yeah, I know electronics. In addition to rocket.
Oh yeah, that's your specialty, right?
Yeah, it's a PN junction, and you drop 0.7 volts just transferring across that PN junction.
I could build a wire guided rocket. This guy can build the avionics package to send it wherever he wants it to go.
Oh, hey, and I got the rocket motor here too to boot. So here we go. Check this out. Here's a fuel grain of a hybrid rocket motor right here.
Wow.
Fired too. In fact, that motor is the daddy, or maybe the granddaddy, the motor that they're using on Spaceship 2 right now.
Yeah, that's bigger than any of the ones I ever built when I was a kid. All right. So we know about solar power. Problem, of course, with solar power is you can only produce power when the sun is shining.
Right.
But there's another problem with solar power as well, and that is the wavelength of light that you use to produce solar power, passing that wavelength of light through a selenium doped chip, is a limited range of the electromagnetic spectrum. However, whenever you apply any kind of type of light to a black body, to something that's dark, let's say like this electrical tape this here, it absorbs those wavelengths of light and converts it to heat. There's a lot more heat in sunlight than there is that limited wavelength of light that we use to produce electricity. So the idea I've come up with is, why don't we use thermoelectric generators and use that thermal energy that's produced by the sun as a power source? And just to show you how effective this is, these guys produce power by, I put my Tesla up there. These things produce power with a difference in heat. And this particular device, the little fins up here are the heat sink. The little tiny thin wafer bit right here, the white part, that's the generator. It's about, I think, 40 millimeters across, very small. Let's see. So a difference in temperature of about 100 degrees from one side to the other is all it takes to produce about 4 volts. And it's
good, considering most of your cells only produce about 1.5 volts.
Right, so it is 83 degrees in here. My forehead is about 92 degrees. So that's just a point of reference in Fahrenheit. That's just a point of reference. That's the only difference in temperature we're gonna work with here. We'll show you. unlike an application where you're trying to heat water to generate steam to turn a turbine to produce electricity, these don't require that you hit 212 plus degrees to make energy. They can make energy off of minor variation. So I've got my test leads here, black to black, red to red. Got my voltmeter here. I'm going to switch it over here to 20 volts and turn it on. Right now it's reading zeros. And let me find my probes. All right, so I got my black here. Here's my parts. I don't want to make it look like I'm pulling a scam on you here. Let's put everything in the view so you can see it. There's all the parts here, everything together. All right. So I'm going to connect my red to my red. And I'm going to be losing some power here just because these are not great connections. but
Oh yeah.
red, black, black. And since it's 83 degrees in here, the ambient temperature is 83. My forehead is 92. What was that a difference of? 9 degrees Fahrenheit. Not a whole lot of difference, but we'll go ahead and.
So now you're going to heat sink your central processing.
There we go. I'm gonna apply this heat sink to my central processing unit, and it's not a great voltage that we're producing here, but what is that?
0.08.
So 8/100ths of a volt from about 8 degrees Fahrenheit difference between here and there. Of course, we could always do something to make it cooler. Where did I put that? Oh, I've got it right here. We'll always do something to make this cooler. I've got some of this chemical duster here that gets really cold. Oof, because we're expanding gases. Expanding gases cause a rapid loss in temperature. This instantly is what happened to the dinosaurs.
Oh yeah. Now 0.16, 0.17. Oh yeah.
So you see, but just by making this side cooler, not adding energy, but taking energy away.
Oh yeah.
I generated more power. So you can see how this
down some now. But
as this side is warming up.
Warming up. Well, now what you and I had talked about earlier is maybe you could put a bunch of those in some kind of array and put have them where they are pulling hot air up and have a thermal chimney, and on the pin side where you've got the radiators, have a ground air loop coming up there and let the hot air pull the cool air up.
Right, because you put your coils down below the surface, about 7-8 feet maybe, where the temperature gradient is constantly about 55 degrees. So you've got 55-degree air passing over that cooling side all the time. The hot side, if we make a concave mirror, like we would make a solar oven, point that at that array, and we have no problem hitting that 100-degree difference. Four of those together, that's 16 plus volts. Run it through a little voltage regulator. This is actually a 12 volt to 5 volt. I don't know where my 24 volt is, but run it through a voltage regulator, and that means you can charge up one of these, which is an EV battery. Lead acid, common materials. You can rebuild the cells if they fail. So this is ways that you can produce electrical power. Not to mention, if you happen to be using one of those solar water heaters where you're pumping water into coils on your rooftop, for example, you've got a sealed box with the black pipe inside, black background,
right?
Nice clear plastic on the top. These get water really, really hot, and they can generate a lot of heat. Take that, pump it down into the ground where you have insulation, thermal insulation to hold that heat in, and now in the middle of the night when the sun isn't shining, you've got a source of hot water that you can pass over the hot side of your thermoelectric generator, and you could be generating electricity all day long with solar energy.
Electricity, heat. So have you worked out a price per watt? It might be
not yet. I still have to put the entire assembly together to see if I can get that 12 volts minimum off of 4 TEG units like that. But it's a fun project. We'll see if we can actually get to the point where I can charge up a battery with it.
Cowboy Roy Rogers has a funny comment. He says, "I'm so blessed to be acquainted with such highly intelligent hillbillies." Yep. I reckon so.
Man.
There you go, Cowboy Roy. You're funny. So and Cheery Weather put in a good comment. He said, using a heat sink and a thin copper plate, you can draw water out of the air. There's many ways to draw water out of the air with temperature differentials or pulling the humidity out of the air. There's the water worka, which is a thick suspended fabric.
Especially around here. And right now it's very humid in here.
Yeah. And another thing you could do, I have dehumidifiers running in my microgreen shredder, and it pulls a lot of water out. So that kind of technology can pull water out. But also, if you're out at sea and you're pumping up water from deep down where it's like 33 degrees is pretty standard. Once you and you pull that through any kind of pipe in the air, you're going to get a lot of condensation on that pipe, and you can produce fresh water in the ocean. if you know
that.
how
And
and you can grow plants. You can grow regular plants, not only just seed plants. If you had we could seed, guys. There's no reason we couldn't be doing seed. If you pass electricity produced in methods like this, and so you got a temperature differential right there that he's talking about.
Got a huge temperature differential that way.
Yeah, if you produce,
it's only 55 degrees coming from a couple feet below the ground, but if you can pull water up from the sea, just a few dozen meters down, that's a lot colder.
Yeah, exactly. And on top of the ocean, most places it's hot. So just think about this. I mean, even in the tropics, it's cold when you go low. So if you're pulling this water up, and it's the differential pressure that you're only pumping really out of the top if you do it right. So the cool thing is you could produce electricity, fresh water, and with electricity, if you put electric current through wires and seawater, it takes that calcium carbonate out. It creeps onto the wires, and you're making concrete. You can grow concrete in the ocean and make this form your floating platforms, and you can grow on it. Guys, there's no reason these people are saying we don't have enough room on Earth. We got too many people. They are so full of it.
They're wrong. They're completely and totally wrong.
We bust that all the time on this channel, all the time. Jason Avers busted it. I busted. You know, it's a bunch of hokum. We can live at the standard of living we're accustomed to and have almost no footprint on the environment, on land or at sea.
Yep.
And the amount of area, if you're growing on 1/10 of an acre for feeding 4 people, the amount of area you need to feed what they project to be the top population of Earth in the future of something like 9 billion people is an area equivalent to the size of New Mexico and Texas, or half of Alaska for everybody. And you wouldn't want everybody to know one spot anyway. We don't get along with each other that well. Just look over in Europe. It just don't work out. We need some separation. Keep them separated. Remember that song? But yeah, go ahead.
This particular technology, the metals that are being used to produce this effect, they're not rare earth metals. We're talking nickel, copper, iron. I think telluride is one of them as well. It's not entirely as common as the others, but it's not a super rare earth element. In other words, we don't have to go to places where gangsters and warlords are holding sway and have them do slave labor to produce the materials needed to make these. So they're not built on human misery. It's also an important thing. Cheap. I know you'd say it's free energy, but it's definitely renewable because the sun's going to keep on shining. The earth is going to keep on turning, and they're always going to have that temperature differential, especially, shoot, I hadn't even thought about using water from the ocean. That's huge.
Groundwater too, but from the ocean especially. Ground air, groundwater, ocean, yeah. Even in a deep pond, you'll get some of that.
Yeah.
So
deep enough in the pond, you get quite a bit of a drop in temperature.
Deep lakes like the Great Lakes. Hey, Brian, how close are you to Great Lakes? There's you something. Of course, you know, they might freeze over in the wintertime, so on occasion. Build your own earth batteries. Exactly, Juana. And that's one of the things he was talking about, an earth battery here earlier. So, and a lot of greenhouses do that too. And there's plenty of videos about doing that. What is Brian saying? Are they built by replicants? No, I don't think so. So yeah, guys, this whole notion that we have too many people, that is the Malthusian crap. They've been selling this since the 1700s. What they fail to account, when Malthusians look at people as mouths,
right?
They forget that for every mouth there's a mind,
right?
And when you get minds in work, we figure out how to produce food and the things we need. That's why we have a brain. That's what it's for. And it's for us to create. It's for us to be smart. The reason we have the limitations we have today is because we're not living smart. The reason we have the limitations we have today is because we're living connected into a grid of high dependency. And that grid of high dependency is shattering around the world right now. It's called globalism. And it doesn't buy us anything. Well, one time I had hoped that all that interdependence would make people not want to fight each other. But we see today that that's totally false. That there's no
because once we become dependent and we wind up with shortages, we start pointing those fingers.
Exactly, and they use that against us,
Yep.
and they play it over on us because part of the world still has peoples that are in autocratic countries, and they're dominated by one person. Even our government has too much of that, way too much of that, and our bureaucracies have grown way past their expire-by date. You know, everything created, every legislation ought to have a sunset date. We
have 435 members of the House of Representatives. We've got 100 senators. These guys' job is to figure out the laws that we're all supposed to live under. They've had 233 years to come up with the laws we're supposed to live under. I think they should be done by now.
Well, they made it worse. They created bureaucracies of unelected people. They call them officials, and they give them the power to create regulations. And through executive order, we've gave our administration the means to also create something equivalent to laws, which they should have no power to exercise. We're operating so far outside the Constitution, it's not funny. Personally, I think
at some point in time, maybe 200 years ago, the legislature should have said, so don't kill each other, don't beat each other up, don't take each other's stuff. Is there anything we missed?
That's it.
Okay, I think we're done.
All you need for that is a sheriff and a county court. We don't need anything bigger than the county for governance, really, except for when some other big country comes up and wants us to shove their ways down our throat. We might need to have some way to deal with that. But if we're really smart and if we could spread out our ideas of individual independence, that would metastasize in these other nations, and maybe all these nation states would just dissolve. Wouldn't we be smart?
Possibly, yeah.
See, Einstein and some of the thinkers at one time thought, well, the answer to the nation states are a problem. The answer is to come up with one gigantic global nation state. That's the worst thing you can imagine. There's no way to get out. There's no escape.
Concentrates all that power at the top, and whenever you have too much power in the hands of too few people, everybody down here at the bottom suffers. Every time,
power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts. How?
Absolutely. Lord Acton.
Yes, Seth Lord Acton. So he came up with that brilliant observation. So yeah, guys, we don't need this. We don't have to have it. So Jesse Mill says, what about storage of electricity when we don't have batteries? Well, electric storage, it's many things are referred to as batteries. Battery is a term that's kind of funny. It started out as artillery terminology, but for electric storage, energy storage in general, you can pump water to the height.
Right.
And when you let it down, that's a battery that puts the storage in potential energy. And when you let that water down, you can turn a turbine with it. A thermal battery is just storing heat in the ground. That's a thermal battery itself. There's many, and with Jason's method, you can turn it directly into electricity. The beauty of what
no turbine needed. Yeah.
The beauty of these thermal batteries is that if you've got a cool loop, you don't need the sun as the hot loop. Or you may have other heat sources. There are many heat sources. A compost. A compost.
Yeah, compost will produce a lot of heat.
Yeah.
I think we're hitting close to maybe 110 degrees in the middle of a compost heap whenever it's good and going. Build yourself some Johnson Sioux bioreactors. Throw your biodegradables in there and run loops in there. Aluminum, copper, whatever you have. Pass your water through there, pick up that heat, run it over to your hot side, generate your power. That's what runs your pumps. Amen. Incidentally, you can use things like that to get power out of areas where you have a small amount of heat, maybe not enough to turn a turbine, but it's enough to evaporate water, say spent nuclear fuel rod pool.
There you go.
That's one of the potential solutions to that big problem that we have. How are we going to keep those rods cooled until that 5-year window passes where we can put them into dry storage?
Yeah, maybe we can just pull a lot of that heat right out.
Yeah,
because
it's still usable energy. It's just not usable to turn a turbine in.
Yeah, well, we could run cooling loops through the water pool, and so the water would evaporate much slower. Maybe put something over the top of it to inhibit the evaporation, and we could just pull that heat right out. That's a beautiful idea. So there's just, that's what I'm talking about. Solutions. There's solutions to almost anything. It's just a matter of mind. It's a matter of engineering. And anything can almost be engineered. You just got to have the will. There's always idiots out there that will try to stand in your way because, oh, well, if you do this, I won't be able to sell my uranium, because I'm a uranium miner and you're wanting to reprocess things, or you want to create energy by other means, or somebody. There's always some self-interest out there that's going to go fight you in Congress, promote whatever they want. But, hopefully we can start getting word out. We can get our voice out there. We can be heard as people, and we can drown out these self-serving lobbyists that have dominated Congress in the past. That's why we need more public advocacy. That's why guys like in our chat room, Cowboy Will Rogers and I formed this Freedom Restoration Foundation. We're tackling this bull by the horns and trying to deal with that. And we got a new alert coming out too, by the way, for the guys who said Blue Bottle Bunny Farms in the house. Very good. Is it Randy, or do we have Susan in the house today? So let's see. We were told that we were great because we were good biblically more, and when we cease to be good, we would cease to be great. Well, we've lost a lot of greatness of late, but hopefully we can start recapturing some. Equal shares of votes to all spaceship Earth crew except during attacks. That's Daniel Twitt. He's my space buddy. Let's see here. Somebody got a comment hidden. All right. They're creating crisis after crisis, says Tom. Well, we can depower them. If we're totally independent, we don't need all their dependencies. They survive because we're dependent.
Right.
That's why
that's exactly
they play the game on us. That's where they get us. How do we get them? Buying their junk.
Right.
Get out of their debt.
We're living right now in a world, most of us, where if we do not have money, we do not survive. We have to go to the store to buy our food. We have to purchase our power. We have to pay for our shelter. We have to pay for our food. We have to pay for our power. We have to pay for our water. We'd have to use this stuff that's got the face of the ruler on it, right? Caesar's coin. We have to use that. We need to give that back to Caesar and stop using it.
Have him keep his junk.
Let Caesar keep what belongs to him.
There we go.
We've got another system we can rely on.
We got Randy in the house. Please don't use any foul language in here, people. This is a family channel. Okay, we got to keep the language mild. This is a family channel, folks. So let's keep the language family oriented. By the way, we are a family too. Those of us in the chat room. So let's see. Now I have a concept that I have shown in several of my videos called the universal habitat.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm anxious to build one of these because you'd be totally independent if you had a universal habitat. You can do elements of this where you live on your homestead. You can incorporate the growing of food that Jason and I have talked about. And Jason covers this stuff a lot. You can talk. You can be more energy independent. There's a lot of things you can do to start walking you in that direction. You can use thermal mass, like put sandbags up the side of your walls of your house. Just put a plastic layer in there so the moisture don't rot out your siding. Or use pond liner or something like that. If you can go partly underground, that's even better. If you could put a flat roof over your house and start growing on top of it, you're making extra use of your space.
IBC totes filled with water.
Do what?
You can use IBC totes filled with water. Paint it black. Absorb your heat energy.
Yeah.
You can always drain them out in the summer and fill them up in the winter.
Yeah, maybe if you're in an area where you don't want solar panels on your roof, you might do sets of IBC totes or maybe blue food grade barrels and have them plumbed in and just put those on.
Those are plentiful, practically free, or sometimes free, depending upon whether you have to go to a person that has access to them or you have access to them.
Yeah, even when you have to buy them, they're not that expensive.
They're not too expensive.
If you're putting soil in them, then you got thermal mass just sitting on your roof, basically. Now you make sure your roof's strong enough for that. Yeah, you might need to reinforce it for some of that, but
this house would need a brand new roof. It was built back in the 1940s, but
you could save so much. And you know what? If you had all that mass up there on your roof, that would radiation proof your house to a big degree too. If you had the sandbags on the side, that's giving you more radiation proofing. It also makes it more resilient to storms. There's a lot of advantages here with these. So you could take and repurpose, re-engineer your home and take it toward the direction of my universal habitat, or you can build a brand new home like the universal habitat. So there's just, and you can add greenhouses on the side of your house. There's just so much we could do to change.
Or incorporate your house into a greenhouse.
Bingo, exactly. And really, that's what a universal habitat does. But I scaled it to the 1/10 of an acre scale because I call it a derivation because the derivations grow on that. But as we found, you and I going through the discussion of what you really needed to grow all your essential nutrients, you could still do that on 1/10, a little bit less than 1/10 of an acre. It was 1,000. How many square feet was it? We figured up there
1,017, but that's not taking into account the space that you need for walkways. But we've already figured out, since then, we've figured out what we do with those walkways, so they're not wasted space either.
There you go. Well, yeah, you can trellis, you can grow some stuff overhead.
Oh yeah, you take your cattle panel, bend it in half. You've got a nice little arch going over that walkway. Vining stuff goes up there, and you're not wasting the overhead space either. So you'd be stacking growing area over your water capture and your walkway and your compost generation.
And dual use for that space. And suddenly it's just becoming your most valuable space. And that's a good place to grow the squash or cucumbers, because when you walk under, they're just hanging down. Just pick them off.
Oh yeah, squash, beans, cucumbers, cherry tomatoes, indeterminate vining tomatoes. Even if they're like beefsteaks, they're brandy wines and mortgage lifters are all vining indeterminates. Those can go right up that trellis and be happy as clams. I don't know that clams are really happy.
I've never had one tell me that.
Yeah, I've never heard a clam say I'm happy with it.
But I know that they used to make some kind of medicine that made it a lot easier for you to harvest clams. I saw the commercial years ago.
Really?
One of those big pharma commercials showing guys out picking clams, Funny the stuff they put on commercials, but so be it. I forgot which commercial that was now. So let's see. Jason told me his house is fully insulated. Really? Brian?
Yeah, it is. They built this thing back in the 1940s whenever fuel was incredibly cheap, and they put a floor furnace in it, and they figured, well, it fuel's cheap, you just burn your floor furnace, you can heat the place up. Yeah, there's
that. Well, a lot of houses didn't have any insulation in them at all in the old days. It was just a outer wall and an inner wall.
Oh yeah, that's what this was. This is the way this one was built. We had the roof redone recently. It wasn't cheap, but we had it redone, and they put a system in there that allows us to capture and vent heat efficiently now, and it's a lot more efficient. Don't have to use as much to heat it. Don't have to use as much to cool it. So that's an improvement. And eventually we'll probably come in and take out the old drywall and put insulation in, some vapor barrier and stuff like that, and then put fresh drywall up. That's home improvement stuff, but it'll be a lot cheaper to maintain. Ultimately, I would really love to move to some place where we have some geo sheltering, a little bit of earth on the outside instead of
amen.
Instead of
and that takes you closer to the
aluminum siding
universal habitat concept that I've talked about. So if y'all want to see that video, all you got to do is go and click videos, and you go on my channel, and that little search glass, just type universal habitat. And I got some excellent videos on that. We'll probably just need to talk about that specifically one day. That'll make a good discussion too. Status quo. Excellent here. Hillbilly or not, I prefer hillbilly engineering as part of my business model. There we go. Hey, we like it. We have no problem with it. So
well, hillbillies have to figure out how to come up with solutions to problems without necessarily having a whole bunch of resources to draw upon.
Well,
so we get inventive.
A lot of people focus on we can't. It's why we can't do this, why we can't do that. I hear that from so many people. That's like, no, can't. My dad used to have a great saying. He always said, "Can't never can do nothing," or "Can't never could do nothing." And that was one of those sayings that says basically quit thinking that way. Think about can. What can you do? And then you find a whole new mindset. And so there's a solution for almost everything. And
I can't make the world a more peaceful place. I can't change the way people do things, but I can change the way I do things. And if I can do it and show how it works, maybe that will be sufficient for other people to see that and go, that's a good idea. I want that too. And then they can choose to do it on their own.
Let it and grow.
But yeah, let the idea go forward. Let it expand. If it's a good idea, people see it and they go, yes, I want that too. You know,
that's another twist on something.
The guy driving by with the nice car, right? He's not forcing you to go out and buy a car. He's not coming up saying, I have mandated that if you do not buy a car, I'm going to come along and put you in a cage, or I'm going to fine you a certain amount of money. He just drives by in a nice car and you go, I like that car. I want one too. That's all you have to do. Show somebody a better way and they'll want it.
Well, I'm hoping to start building these universal habitats in the not too distant future. And hopefully that's how people are going to react to them. I don't believe we should ever force anybody in to living in anything they don't want. My hope is that we'll make it so beautiful that people and so financially attractive, people couldn't imagine anything else. That's my hope. Because I believe in freedom. I'm a big fan of freedom. Let people choose their own. There's so many people who tell us how to live, supposing to solve these problems. How about we come up with ideas that are so great that that's nobody, they wouldn't want anything else. That this is what people are going to want because the idea is great. If you got to force somebody into something, the idea is not great. You got a problem.
I don't seem to recall anybody being forced to buy color TVs.
There you go. No, don't reckon.
Nobody was forced to buy computers. Nobody was forced to buy cellular phones. But these things were such wonderful inventions that people saw and went, we have to have them. We want them. And then the demand went out for them. And lo and behold, now they're everywhere. So we come up with the good ideas. We make them available to people. People see them. They want them. They're going to demand them.
Right. Daniel Twitt said, turn your green thermostat to worm. Randy Blue Bottle Bunny Farm says, poverty is the mother of invention. Well, that and unfortunately warfare has been too much so. But, you know, let's get some hope fair going here, and hopefully we can use that to get some invention.
Poverty is also a state of mind.
Bingo. That is true. The consciousness of poverty.
I could be sitting out in the middle of the woods without a penny to my name and think I'm the richest man on earth.
And you probably would be, because you got the happiness. Having money don't make you happy. It might make life more comfortable in some ways, but that doesn't necessarily make it better. Some of the most unhappy people in the world are rich, very rich.
Well, whenever you have lots of possessions, you have to worry about your possessions because there's somebody coming along that's wanting to take them from you. If you don't keep track of them, if you don't tend to your business affairs, your business goes awry, and you're constantly chasing after your money. This is the reason why it's impossible to be happy if you have a lot of possessions.
Yeah, Sierra Star says, is it okay to grow vegetables next to no septic tank? I'm late. You want to give her the 2 minute
the quick 2 minute spiel. It's okay to grow vegetables next to an old septic tank. It's okay to grow them next to an active septic drainage field, as long as you are not growing root vegetables in the ground. Your fresh greens close to the ground where they can get stuff splashed on them, and your root systems are not too intrusive. Intrusive root systems are going to get down into the drain field and mess that up. So you don't want that to happen. So shallow roots and whatever you're growing needs to be up above the soil, so it's not in danger of getting splashed by nasty stuff. And other than that, yeah, grow away. The plant's going to filter out. The plant is going to filter out any microorganisms that would go up into the fruit that the plant is producing. That fruit is fine. It might have something that gets on it that's not okay. So make sure that you're growing up well away from that. Mulch heavily over the top of it, and you'll have even fewer worries.
There you go. There you go. Let's see. My dad was rich, told my bro, told doctor he's senile. He was just happy as it could be, huh? That's a good one, Granny. All right. Well, I think well, we do like some humor in here, and we are a family, so that's a good thing. You know, we're staring at a very bad time in our future potentially, But I always tell everybody, no matter how arduous it gets, no matter how tough the going gets, just always rest in the assurance that there is a silver lining around every
mushroom cloud. There we go. And also keep in mind, the end of the world as we know it is not a bad thing, because the world as we know it, it's in a mess. I think we need the world as we know it to come to an end, because there's a better world coming up behind it.
Yeah, we just hope it don't have radiation in that ending.
And the way we get it is we take these and we put them to work.
Yeah, in conjunction with this.
In conjunction with this. Yeah.
And these. We can solve our problems with this, but we got to make it actual. We got to make it happen, and it takes these to make it happen.
Yep. Get out, get started.
There we go. There's the challenge to everyone. And how can you start? Grow in your garden.
Yep.
Grow your own food. Produce your own energy. That's the best prepping anybody can do. Every
step that you take towards independence gets you a step closer to being able to tell the vultures out there and the parasites no.
Bingo.
And having the power to say no is real power.
Amen. That is what was. I don't need you. What value do you have to me? None. So just remember that. I always say the proposition this channel is help you survive, thrive. The gardening, the energy is giving the survival and the thrive, and to stay out of the hive. You get all three of these by getting more and more independent. More people we get on this path, the better off we all are. And I always tell you, if you do have to buy something, do buy local. Do trade locally as much as you can. Support your local farmer, artisan, tradesman as much as possible. The small guys, not the big multinational, multi-state chain things. Help them, because every time you spend a unit of money, whatever it is, you are voting for that product and service. So the more of those you send up the river to the big guys, the more you're voting them in their power. That's what they want, and we are going for independence here. So the less and less we need them, the better off we are.
Whatever you're putting your time, your capital, your energy into, that's what you're promoting.
Amen. All right. It's good to see this. We got people bragging. I got worm poo. Very good, Grant. That's a good thing to brag about. Vicky says success and genius is 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. Yeah, that's the actualization side of it. Lose your fears of no. Yeah, we got to know no. No is a very important word, and we got to tell them no at times. We sell rabbit poop for $1 per gallon. And by 5-gallon buckets cannot keep up with the demand, says Blue Bottle.
That's nice. Yeah.
There you go. That's good. All right. I got people knocking on my door here. So I think we've gone far enough here. Is there Constitution for us? Well, I think the Constitution is the least government. The government governs least as the government governs best. That's what they tried to set up here. But at 200 years, they found every way in the world to pervert that.
Oh, well, this one isn't a constitution. This one's a Declaration of Independence.
Amen. I think that's a better document.
I think I like this document better.
I agree.
When it came to execution, what they wound up with created the mess we're in. Either it created it or was incapable of preventing it. And we might need to go back and rethink some things.
All right. Well, let's see here. Somebody's asked me if I'd do a show with North Shore. I might do that. That's an idea. So I have to talk with North Shore, see if he wants to do a show. We might do that. All right, guys, just remember that. Independence, we can get there. And Absolutely. It starts at home. Starts with you. And another thing is kind of to take off with something that Jason said earlier, which is kind of pans into something I always tell you guys, is that as light dispels darkness, love dispels hate. And when he's talking about what he can do, he can't change the world, but what he can do right there, it works the same way. Go out and shine your love light into the world.
I can't change the world. I can change me.
The more you shine your light, it gets effective. And it can metastasize. This is how we change the world. This is how we change. Plus, if we show people how they can be independent and spread these ideas, we do that. And also, well, I have created with the help of guys like Cowboy Roy Rogers, the Freedom Restoration Foundation to try to, kind of push things along so they don't throw onerous legislation down our throat and we can maybe regain freedoms lost. But all these things play hand in hand. The most powerful thing you can do is be as independent as you can be. So with that, Jason, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. You've got an awesome channel yourself. I love the way you think. I love the way you operate. You're awesome. Like I told everybody, I said that Jason was brilliant, and I wasn't kidding. You can see it. When a rocket scientist says somebody's brilliant, take it to the bank.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. So everyone, I want y'all to take care. You have a last word, Jason?
Oh, no, I think you said it perfectly.
All right. Well, thank you. All right. Go out and shine your love light into the world. Be independent. Subscribe to the channels, his and mine, if you haven't done it already. And
definitely subscribe to Greg's if you haven't already.
Yeah, grow your own food. Produce as much energy as you can. Be as independent as possible. Shop local, and we will rise to better times. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Thank you, super chatters. Thank you, mods. Y'all take